So I'm talking about talent, and specifically around how social media has really transformed and disrupted talent. First who, then what, and the right people on the bus. You guys may recognize the quotes from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. And what that book was about is about how good companies were distinctly different from great companies, and what were the elements of that. And talent was one of the key attributes of that. In 25 years of business, other than getting a lot of gray hair, I also found out just the real power that talent can provide. It is a distinct differentiator between the good and the great, and what makes a good idea actually achievable. In this talk, what I have is a framework, and it really looks at the convergence of four things coming together. It's the psychology, it's the technology, it's discovery, and it's development, and how all of these come together to form incredibly great talent. So let's talk about the first one, psychology. When my father was in university, then he worked at the Coleman Company. When I went to university, he was at the same company. How many of you have worked at the same company for 25 years? Nobody. In fact, that's something that we wouldn't even conceive of today. But in his time, it was absolutely the norm, right? There was nothing, there was nothing different about that whatsoever. But in today's world, then the average 30-year-old is going to have 5 jobs, right? And so what happens is the psychology is fundamentally changed. The 25-year watch, the job for life, the pension plan that's there that you stick with the company forever is completely inconceivable. And so the psychology now is that I am going to go from job to job and I'm also going to be planning my career. I'm going to be thinking about, well, ultimately, here's where I want to get to, and then what are the different steps that I need to take, knowing that I'm going to have to go to several different companies in order to achieve that actual outcome. And so the psychology now is that your company is a stepping stone. Your role is a stepping stone. And I know that I'm going to leave. As soon as I join, I know that I'm going to be thinking about my next step as well. All right, so that psychology is fundamentally different. If you look at the great, talented people, they also don't put up with a lot of mediocrity, right? They want to make sure that they work with great people, and so they're going to be pushing the boundaries as well, right? So that's from a psychology standpoint. If you look at the technology, this is where it's being completely disrupted. First by the internet, which had a little bit to do with some things, because before we had job adverts, right, in newspapers primarily, and that's how people would find out about professional recruiters as well. But the technology moved to the internet, and then you had job boards, which actually really wasn't all that disruptive, because what they did is they took a job advert, which was on a newspaper, put it online, you get a little bit better distribution, and you also get easier access. But the real disruption came from and comes from social, and mainly professional networks. Because what that does is it unlocks a huge ecosystem of professionals who have a psychology of, I want to make sure I'm enhancing myself all the time as I'm finding my next job. And so they know that by putting themselves on a professional network, it's not about finding a job, it's actually about how do I do the job that I'm in even better? Right? So how do I discover information and insights in a way that is really driven by the other people that I'm connected to in my own professional remit. The other thing that it unlocks is referrals. Great people want to work with other great people know great people. So referrals are actually being unlocked at a very massive scale, with this professional networking. The other thing that it has is you can start to unlock other things, like when you're going to hire somebody, you think, well, I want to know more about this person, because in an interview you only get to know so much. So I want to find out all the different people that they worked for in the past, and maybe the people that we know in common. You can very easily find that as well through this technology. So that's one of the big disruptors that's taking place. The other thing that's happening is in the discovery side of things. In the discovery, or what some people call sourcing, then what happens again here is people are looking at how do I actually go off and find these people? because before it was all job boards, you had to wait for somebody to actually come and apply. If we look 10 years ago in the UK specifically, then 70% of the employees that were hired were actually hired through professional recruiters. And why was that mainly? It's because there was no way for companies to actually discover talent. Again, through professional networks, then that talent is actually very easily discoverable. If you look at a site like LinkedIn, they have over 100 million people, and it's growing at about 1 million every week. Right? So you see that this proliferation of great people continuing to join this community, this ecosystem, because in part, one of it is the discoverability. Accenture, there was a big article written about them spring of 2010. They were trying to hire 55,000 people in 1 year. That's a lot of people in 1 year. And what did they do? They actually had 3 big themes that they went after. One is professional networks because of the discoverability. The other is on-campus recruiting. Right? They went to the campus, and because nobody has really done college recruiting yet, right? That's a next step for technology to really disrupt. But they went on campus, and then nothing takes away the great face-to-face. But the other thing that they did is they really worked on their employer brand. They looked at, say, well, if I'm going to attract great people, then the discovery actually works the opposite way. I want to make sure that all of these great people can now discover my great company. And so they really invested a lot in that. One of the big ways they invested, which is the same thing that if you look at McKinsey and Deloitte and Goldman Sachs and a lot of these companies do, is they invest in their alumni, right? And they use technology in order to keep track of all of their alumni. Because they know that a referral from somebody who has worked from their company is going to typically be a really good referral. And they also understand that they want to make sure that those positive experiences happen, and then you'll discover that your company, and it's widely known that your company is a great place in order to work. So those are some of the disruptive things that are happening. And you see that the tables actually turn in both directions. It's not just discovering employees, it's employees discovering your company. The last piece is development. And this really is the key. And this has nothing to do with technology, but it is very much disruptive. It has everything to do with really embracing the psychology that you're a stepping stone. And let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about. And this is what I told every employee who started at LinkedIn. I was formerly at LinkedIn. I'm now into other things now. But it was every 2 weeks, then we brought in new employees. And I would tell them, I would say, welcome to one of the best companies in the world. And what my commitment is to you is I want to make sure that you are ready for the next step in your career. And when you leave LinkedIn, then you're going to have a transformational experience because of us and be in a place that's fundamentally different from where you were before. And they would always kind of look a little bit shocked, like, hey, I just started here. This is my first day. What are you talking about? I'm leaving. And I would ask them, I said, who here believes that this is their last job? And the answer is nobody. Nobody thinks that, just because I started, this is going to be the end point. And it's identifying with the psychology that they have that we're a stepping stone, but really fully embracing that. And I would tell them that this is going to be a challenging role, right? Our ambitions are high. The scope that we have transforming an industry is absolutely massive. And our standards are very high as well. But because you're here, that means we believe in you, and we're also going to invest in your future, just as you will invest in your future with us as well. And together, we will transform an industry. And that's what I'm talking about as far as development, is really understanding what are their motivations, and then helping them get to that next level. And in turn, what you do is you unlock some incredible, great talent along the way. Now, what also happens is, you have a lot of fun doing that. Recruiters are going to call them, other people are going to call them about another role, and they're going to say, you know what? I'm not really ready for that yet because I'm actually having the time of my life right now. So keep me in mind, but I'm staying here for right now. Eventually, they will leave because, let's face it, they will outgrow the company at some point, and they're going to be ready for the next step. And when they go to their next role, they are going to be the most incredible ambassador for your company and tell people about how incredible and how their career was transformed at your company. So in closing, what I want to talk to you about is to say that technology, discovery, it is fundamentally being changed and disrupted by professional networks like LinkedIn. If you are not using them, you're really at a competitive disadvantage. It's getting to that point now. But the challenge that I have for you today is really to look at the psychology and understand your company as a stepping stone and to fully embrace development. Not just sending people on a couple of courses, but really embrace that to say, I'm going to understand what is your motivation in your next role, and I'm going to help you get there. And in turn, what happens is great things will happen for that individual, great things will happen at the company, and great things will happen in your career because you will be leading a team of incredibly talented people. And that's my challenge for you today, is disrupt through development. Thank you.